It's no secret that narcissists are quite inclined to engage in unfair, cruel, abusive, dishonest behavior. But when we call them out on their behavior or on the things that they've done, we can get sucked into a vortex of confusion and self-doubt and invalidation and frustration. Why is it that this so often happens when we call narcissists out on their behavior? And what's the right way to call a narcissist out? Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Firstly, when you're considering calling a narcissist out on their behavior or on something that they've done, I think it's really important to ask yourself, what do you expect to get out of this interaction? What are you hoping to achieve? What do you hope is going to happen when you call a narcissist out? And I also want to talk about the fact that a lot of times we don't realize that we're dealing with a narcissist. I think calling a narcissist out on their behavior can often be the thing that exposes them as somebody with extreme empathy problems, logic problems, reasoning problems. Calling a narcissist out can often be the thing that clues us in that something is very wrong. Something's not normal with the way this person communicates and processes information. This can often be the thing that leads us to discover that we believe this person is a narcissist, because the things that we call them out for are often met in extremely unusual ways or unexpected ways. Like if we say something to them like, "Don't call me stupid," we expect a normal person to at least acknowledge that calling you stupid is not a nice thing to do. But I've actually had a personal experience with this, so I use this example a lot. When I did this to somebody I believe is extremely narcissistic, he actually came back and explained to me why it was okay for him to call me stupid and why it was unreasonable for me to get upset. And in my opinion, that's an extremely unreasonable and very unusual way to react to somebody close to you telling you not to call them stupid. Because asking somebody not to call you stupid is such a reasonable request. Any normal person would apologize, or like I said, at least acknowledge that that's not an appropriate thing to do. They wouldn't try to pretend that it's okay to call people stupid. Another example might be if you call somebody out by saying, "Why did you lie to me about where you were last night?" You would expect a normal person, assuming that you have some evidence, you would expect a normal person to at least admit that the evidence you have proves that they lied about where they were. You don't expect this person to come back and disagree with like video footage of them at this place or hard evidence that they were not where they said they were. But narcissists will. They will actually argue with you about irrefutable proof of where they were and what they were doing. And that can be really jarring, really confusing to have somebody arguing with you about solid facts. So going back to the original question of what do you expect to get out of this interaction? What do you expect to get out of the narcissist when you call them out? Once somebody, whether you believe they're a narcissist or not, once somebody has established a pattern of dodging reality, making excuses for extremely disrespectful, unreasonable behavior, invalidating you, refusing to listen to you, refusing to understand what you're saying, I think this is when you need to start adjusting your expectations of what you're going to get out of these interactions. It doesn't mean that it's okay for them to do any of these things. It doesn't mean that you have to accept their behavior as in be okay with it, but it does mean that you have to accept reality, that you're dealing with somebody who refuses to take accountability for things and refuses to even acknowledge reality. So asking yourself the question of, what do I expect to get out of this interaction? What do I expect this person to do in response to me calling them out? Consider how they have behaved in the past. Consider how they've reacted to you calling them out in the past and ask yourself why you would expect anything different. Narcissists in particular do not respond normally to being called out on things that can be even the most egregious things. I mean, even if they cheat on you, a narcissist can come back and somehow blame it on you or deny it when you have irrefutable proof or whatever. Once they've shown you that that's the kind of person they are, I think it's important to ask yourself what you expect to get out of continuing to call somebody out on behavior that they clearly won't take accountability for. And now I want to talk about why this happens with narcissists. Why is it so difficult to call narcissists out on their behavior? Why do they suck you into this vortex of endless, pointless arguments that you end up arguing about things that don't even have anything to do with what you were originally trying to call them out for? And you can start to doubt yourself. You can start to wonder if maybe you're imagining things or you're overreacting. You can start to feel like the rug is being pulled out from under you and you don't even know which way is up anymore. Why does this happen with narcissists? Narcissists do not respond to being called out on their behavior in a normal way for several reasons. One reason is that narcissists don't care if they damage the relationship with you. Narcissists would rather avoid accountability than protect the relationship they have with you. And it does not matter what the relationship is. If this is your spouse or your parent or your best friend, it doesn't matter how important this relationship is to you. A narcissist will sacrifice any relationship if it means avoiding accountability. And that is not typically a normal thing for people to be willing to do. Most normal people value their relationships enough to realize, oh, I messed up. I lied about this thing or I said something rude. And now because I care about this relationship, I have to acknowledge what I did. I have to try to make amends somehow because I don't want to damage the relationship. And narcissists, that is not a factor for them. They don't care. They would much, much rather avoid accountability than preserve the relationship. Another reason that this happens with narcissists is narcissists don't care how their choices affect you. This person that called me stupid, he did not care that it hurt my feelings. He did not care that it damaged the relationship, that it made me angry or it made me feel bad or frustrated. He did not care how that affected me. A narcissist that cheats on you does not care how much that hurts you. A narcissist that lies to you does not care how that affects you or how that affects the trust of the relationship. Narcissists don't care how their behavior affects you. And of course, that is not normal. Most people care at least a little bit what they say and what they do and how their choices affect you, how their choices make other people feel. Most people care how their choices affect even total strangers, or most people are at least willing to consider that. But narcissists could not care less how any of their choices affect other people. And that leads into the next reason that narcissists do this, and that is narcissists feel like when you're calling them out for something, that you're betraying them somehow. It's not just that they don't care how their behavior hurts you. They don't even recognize it. They care so little about your feelings that it's not even a thought in their head. I mean, if they're angry at you, they might take pleasure in your pain, right? But when they're just doing what they want, saying what they want, when they're venting or they do something thoughtless, they feel like they have a right to do all these things, and you don't have a right to be hurt by their behavior because you exist solely for them. You shouldn't have any needs that interfere with the way they want to act, with the things they want to do. And if you really cared about them, and if you were really loyal to this relationship you have with them, you would just keep quiet. You would just pretend that everything's fine, because how dare you trouble them with the way their behavior has hurt you when they have already been so persecuted, when they have had to deal with more than you could ever imagine, and when their feelings are so much more important than yours are. How dare you betray them and hurt them by talking about how much they've hurt you? Normal people understand that when they hurt someone, that person has a right to bring it up. That person has a right to talk about the way that their feelings have been hurt. Narcissists don't recognize that. Narcissists feel like your hurt feelings are an attack against them. They don't even think about how you feel because they're so busy defending their own ego. That isn't even a thing for them. That's just a nuisance. And if you really cared about them, you would sacrifice yourself for their needs. And all of these reasons are exacerbated by the fact that narcissists have an extremely hard time handling any kind of criticism. Narcissists are extremely sensitive, insecure people that cannot handle any suggestion that they aren't absolutely perfect. And this is part of the reason why when you try to call them out on their behavior, they feel like you are betraying them, because how could you say something so hurtful, so awful as to suggest that they aren't perfect? How could you do that to them? This all ties into a narcissist's black and white thinking that everyone is either all good or all bad. They're either 100% perfect and flawless, or they are an absolute piece of garbage. And when you call them out on something, when you criticize them for something, even if it's something they know they did, they are not going to be able to accept that without internalizing the belief or kind of letting the belief they already have flow through them that they are an absolute worthless piece of garbage. And that's why they're willing to sacrifice their relationships, to hurt you, to throw you under the bus. That's why they're willing to do all of these things to avoid accountability, because accountability for even the smallest offense to them means that they are a complete piece of garbage. And it's really ironic that the quality of their character and, honestly, just how horrible of a person they can be is a result of how hard they're trying to pretend that they're perfect. So taking all of this into consideration, what's the right way to call a narcissist out? What can you expect when you call a narcissist out on their behavior? And like I was saying in the beginning of the video, what do you expect to get out of this interaction? I think it's really normal and natural for a lot of us, even if we've been dealing with this person for decades, to continue to expect and hope for some kind of acknowledgement of what you're saying, for something to change, for this person to be somewhat reasonable, even if they've never done it in the past. Because it's so hard to accept the reality that this grown adult that usually seems like a somewhat reasonable person can pretend that things that they did never happened, or can absolutely insist on misunderstanding the simplest concepts that you're trying to explain to them. It's so hard to accept that this person refuses to take accountability for the simplest things that we can continue to try to get them to do this, like I said, for decades sometimes. So when we call a narcissist out for their behavior or their lies or whatever, it's important to understand that they are not going to accept what you're saying. They're not going to agree with you. They're not going to let you know that they understand what you're saying. But it's important to remind yourself that they can hear you. They do understand what you're saying. They do remember what happened. But if they acknowledge it, if they don't make excuses, if they don't turn it around on you, if they don't make you doubt yourself, now they have to accept accountability. And they are going to do anything to avoid that. So when you call them out on something, know that this is an explanation you're offering to them. And they don't have to accept it. They don't have to agree with you. But know that they do understand what you're saying. And that's really all you need to know. And that really has to be your only purpose going in, because that's the only purpose you're really going to be able to achieve. If you go into a situation where you're trying to call a narcissist out because you're trying to explain why you're ending the relationship or why you are saying no to them on something, and you engage in an argument that just goes on and on for years, sometimes goes in circles, never gets anywhere, where you are just trying over and over and over again to explain to them why their behavior hurt you, or why you can't trust them, or why you can't do this thing for them. When you keep trying to explain it over and over and over again, what you're really communicating to them is that you are not going to assert your boundaries until they agree with you, until they accept what you're saying. And they do this on purpose, whether they're conscious of it or not. They do it because as long as they can keep you engaged in an argument, everything's up in the air. They can pretend that they are innocent. Because if you really understood and believed that they did do what you're accusing them of, or they did lie, or they do need to be held accountable for whatever it is they did. If you really believed that, you wouldn't feel this need to keep arguing with them about it, to keep trying to get them to accept accountability or to admit to what they've done. So let's say that they cheated on you and this is the last straw and you're ending the relationship. If you feel the need to explain this to them, which a whole other topic is the idea that you really don't owe them an explanation. You don't need to explain anything to a narcissist. You don't need to explain to them why you have boundaries, why you're saying no, why you're cutting off the relationship. You don't owe them an explanation. But if you want to give them an explanation in this example, all you need to do is say, you know what, you've cheated on me and that's it, I'm ending the relationship. And then don't engage in any arguments with them. When they come back with, I didn't cheat, or that wasn't me, or whatever explanation they have, if you are confident that you have enough evidence for yourself that you're convinced they did cheat, you need to look at your confrontation or your calling them out as an explanation you're providing, not a debate that you're inviting them to. Because in this example, if you do end up in an argument about whether or not they cheated or whether or not it was okay for them to cheat, you're keeping the door open. You're keeping the idea open that maybe they are innocent. Maybe you don't have the right to assert boundaries or to make your own decisions. Because obviously it's really, really important to you that they agree with your version of reality. Obviously it's really important to you that they understand and admit that they understand what you're saying. In the example I gave earlier about this narcissistic person that called me stupid, if I had enough confidence in myself to say, no, it's not okay for this person to call me stupid, I wouldn't really feel the need to engage in an argument with this person about whether or not it's okay to call me stupid. But engaging in the argument, whether I mean to or not, it communicates to this person that I'm willing to debate this. And if I'm willing to debate it, it means it's up in the air. At least from the narcissist's perspective, to the narcissist, it means, you know what, maybe it is okay for you to call me stupid. And maybe it's going to be okay for as long as I'm willing to debate this with you. So for as long as the narcissist denies reality and pretends to be confused, it means in their imagination, in their fantasy world, it means they are off the hook. It means they don't have to accept any accountability until they decide that they're willing to take accountability. They don't need to accept any consequences or any of your boundaries until they decide that they agree with whatever it is you're saying. So going into these situations, expecting the narcissist to agree with reality or to acknowledge reasonable amounts of accountability leaves you open to allowing them to keep control of the situation and to keep emotional control of you. Going back to the original question in the beginning of this video, what do you expect to get out of the interaction? I think with somebody who has demonstrated that they're unwilling to accept accountability, that they're unwilling to even accept reality, I think you may want to reconsider trying to call them out at all. Because if you expect to have a healthy interaction, what's the point of calling them out? They've already shown you that that is never going to happen with them. However, if you just want to communicate with them, you just want to explain why you're leaving or why you're asserting this boundary, let that be the objective. And just say to them, I'm not going to let you borrow my car because last time I did, you kept it much longer than I told you to. And then that's it. That's the end of the discussion. There's no debating, there's no negotiating. And of course, they're going to come back and try. Of course, they're going to say things to bait you. And this is when you just simply don't reply. Don't engage, don't answer. If you do say anything back, all you have to do is just keep repeating, I've already explained this, I've already explained this, I've already explained this over and over again, if you want to. So remember, after understanding all these things that play into the reasons calling narcissists out is so difficult, if you still decide that you want to explain yourself or you want to call them out on something because you just want them to know that you know what they did, or you just want them to know that you're offended by something they said, let that be your objective, and don't expect any kind of validating behavior back from them. Don't expect them to even admit to anything that they've done. Say whatever it is you want to say to them and let it be a message that you are delivering, not a debate that you're inviting them to. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.